We're going to break this down into 3 different sections. First bit is determining what to use, getting past the shiny things of technology and making sure it works for your organisation. And then a couple of case studies from WCP and Grametti on why we've chosen certain technologies. And then how all of that supports critical actors within the counter-illegal wildlife trade scope of work, being the decision maker, the analysts, the lawyers, and also the guys on the ground who make the arrests and disrupt illegal wildlife trade. So when we're going to talk more, and Denton's going to come up now to present, but looking beyond the razzle-dazzle, and obviously this is a technology conference, so this might not make many friends, but it's very, very common for people to see different technologies and think, yes, I want that, it's bright and shiny, give that to me now, it's going to solve all my problems. And as the quote there says, there's a lot more to it than getting an app. And it's very common, and I see it in a lot of workshops around Africa where people want to make an application to solve complex social problems. It doesn't really work that way. So this is all about the process of determining how, or the what, and the how of determining what is going to be useful for an organisation, for any technology that's going to be applied, and then we're going to bring that into the counter-illegal wildlife trade space. Denton.
Cool, so we kind of broke it up into these 5 components: the methods, people, hardware, software, and data. I think a lot of guys have seen this in itself as an entirety of what a GIS comprises of, but it obviously it entails a lot more than just the system of a GIS. So it's just a simplified overview diagram of what we're going to speak about, like the methods, the who, what, why, determining like the different requirements, etc., like that. The people, who are the most fundamental part of this entire process. And yeah, so we'll get into the details here a bit more. So we'll start with the methods, and the methods are there. So when we look at it, we look at the methods from a partner, security, collector, and dissemination or usage perspective. So obviously when you're looking at partners, is it governmental, NGOs, what kind of integrations with different or current systems that could actually be able to enhance, or versus like what do we need to create for their specific needs. From a security aspect, you obviously got to look at access, editing, security audits, that kind of stuff, compartmentalizing, info security, and operations security. From a collector perspective, so we're talking about like the actual admin and logistics, as well as what are the requirements from a collection, like what are you actually going to do with the information. And then obviously the usage, is it, what do you want, like from an accessibility, real-time versus non-real-time, or near real-time, information security, as well as operation security. We go on to people. Now people, we said right at the beginning, was probably the most integral part of this entire process, because without people, things can't get done. They form part of the core thread between all 5 of these components. When we look at collectors, obviously, what capacity building needs to take place? Integrity, so data accuracy, all that kind of information. Requirements versus reality. So what is required, but what can actually be done in the real world? Because like we all know, we might want real-time data in a remote access park, but in reality that's not always possible. So there's going to be workarounds. From an analyst perspective, again, what is their capacity, the integrity, so data accuracy, and the integrity of the person himself. Also, the requirements from a decision maker purpose, and then also the main thing is the feedback loop. So how do we get that information back into the field to actually inform the collectors or the decision makers? Obviously the decision makers are the ones that are actually going to be informed about how the information is collected and processed, and communication with the analysts and operatives. All of you guys know about adaptive management processes. So yeah. So operatives, why do they need what they need? What can they collect? What tools or products can they use for their planning side of things? And then closing that loop again. Data perspective, obviously, from a direction, like what does it actually make, what is actually required to make a proper decision, and who's actually going to be using that information to make that decision. You don't know what questions to ask of information if you don't know what you don't know. So teaching people how to ask the right questions to drive them in the right direction. From a collection perspective, you've got to look at the appropriate sources of information. Is it consistent? Is it standardized? Can we manage it over time? Because we're all looking at spatial data, we want to be able to manage, do analysis over time as much as possible to determine patterns and trends. From a processing perspective, what is required? Timelines, decision makers, and operator focus. And then security, again, what capacity needs to be built, the integrity that needs to be maintained, and then the requirements versus the actual reality. From an accessibility and storage, capacity, decision makers, auditing, and feedback loop. So a lot of the stuff will be repeated because you'll see that obviously it is applicable to all sides of it. But like Jack says, these are the things that are boring, but it needs to be considered and made sure that it is holding true. Now, software is just the thing that we use in this entire process. It is just a tool within the whole process or the toolbox. So from a collective perspective, they're on the ground. They're the first ones to actually be interacting with the information. So how do we teach them to hold the integrity of that information or capture it from an analytical point of view? How are they managing, how are they verifying, how they're processing the complexity or the compatibility of the information, and then feeding it through to the organization, the partners. From a legal perspective, logistics and admin, what resources need to be allocated where. Again, integration with current and future. So there's always stuff that's coming out with regards to software that's going to have to be fitted in and slotted in, and how does those workflows then be maintained. So from a decision-making perspective how do they interpret the information? A lot of these guys receive just reports, but then they don't actually know how to interpret it, so teaching them how to ask the right questions. And then from an operation perspective, we want to try reduce the complexity as much as possible so that we can adequately support them as much as possible. Hardware, it speaks for itself, but from a collective perspective, how easy is it to use the hardware? How much capacity do we need to put in order to teach them? From an admin and logistics, like how do we get them out to the field? Hardware is not just the phones or the computers, it's also the vehicles, the camping equipment. You guys know it's all about that kind of stuff. From an analyst perspective, what's suitable, what needs, what resources and integrity can we maintain there? From an organization partnership perspective, what capacity needs to be built? How do we help them with their reporting line? So how do we share the reports and stuff? Legality, integration, sustainability, also feeding into budgets. Maybe even using EarthRanger to do budget reporting, expenditure reports. So from an operation perspective, what capacity integration needs to be done, and then usefulness, administration, logistics. So that's pretty much it in the sense of the 5 components that we kind of look at and make sure that we're covering all these bases, because it's not just one thing.
Thank you, Denton. So myself and Wes, we're going to talk about how all that applies and why it's chosen, why it's driven us to decide on different technologies to use as well. So what was needed, and I mean this applies for both Dromedi and WCP as a case study for this, was we needed a better way to integrate reporting and operations data to support the decision makers, but also the operatives who are getting things done. Now, you can probably see what application we chose for this as well, but we listed our requirements. We listed what we needed to do and why we actually wanted to do it.
I just want to sort of I suppose we can talk about what that software is right now.
Yeah, go for it.
So we're at the EarthRanger conference, so I'm going to start with that. The ability to actually take information and put it somewhere where it can then be used for analytical purposes pretty much didn't exist before. And so the EarthRanger has helped us to do that. Certainly in a project that we've been involved with in this space more recently, we have been able to get almost real-time data right up the chain to the big decision makers, as Jack was saying, in near real time, which is actually helping them to make decisions and understand the nature of the problem, which I believe perhaps in the past was not the case. A second software, again, thanks to our partnership with EarthRanger, was Semantica. And I just have to say that Semantica, in support of, we don't actually do any of this work ourselves. We support one or more government institutions to do that work. And Semantica has actually helped us to understand. A lot of people thought that bushmeat poaching was very much a subsistence activity. And Semantica has been the single thing that has helped us to understand that actually it's not. It's a commercialized activity. It's very organized. There are many tiers to the network. And so what that allows you to do as a protected area management person is to come back and actually, instead of trying to catch poachers on the protected area, which is actually a symptomatic treatment of the problem, you're actually able now to point and be very specific about how you deal with that problem. So having that tool, Semantica, has very much helped us to understand what the real problem is, and then helped us how to deal with that problem. Thanks.
So looking at it in terms of those 5 characteristics, obviously one's missing being software. So for the Zambian perspective and our support to DNPW, we had existing systems, be it reporting, be it operation requests, fund requests, but the thing was it could be enhanced. It was already working, and it goes back to that first quote of, if it's already inefficient, technology will just make it even more inefficient. So this is where we could actually enhance the processes that we had by actually using technology. What we also saw was that real-time collection and reporting wasn't really needed for everything, especially in the counter-trafficking game. And the unfortunate thing with these operations is that they're less successful than they would be for, say, park operations when it comes to interdiction. That's just the nature of counter-trafficking in general. So historical reporting, in line with anything that was near real-time, still had valuable applications. What we saw as well is that both within WCP and then our partners in DNPW is that there was a capacity building requirement, so we also wanted to reduce on that. We wanted to support those decision makers and operatives and to speed up decision making in any support, be it in the field or in any kind of, HQ or office environment. But like anything, you need a redundancy plan in place as well. You can't just have the one guy who uses the GPS. You can't just have the one guy who uses anything to report on EarthRanger. If there's no internal redundancy plan for WCP, how's it actually going to be effective? It's likewise with our partners in DNPW. And for the data, again, just due to the sensitive nature of the work, InfoSec and OPSEC, we already had those mitigations. And this was also another thing where technology can enhance, especially with, the technology EarthRanger. You can compartmentalize it. Not everyone can see everything as well. The other beauty of that, using EarthRanger as that system, is that you can make your own reporting for it. So you don't have money, and you have to fight for it with donors. Computer only lasts 3 years, a phone might only last 1, and then that also depends if you're an operative, it might last 1 month because everything happens in the field. So they already have the existing hardware to actually do this. We didn't have to buy anything new to make the system work, and we didn't want to as well. So whatever system could be in place, it would be able to be plugged in, we can start using it straight away. So we work out our software, big surprise, EarthRanger for this example. But Wes, do you have any points on that last one?
No, pretty much.
Same ball? Cool.
Yeah, same thing.
And so it met the requirements, it's flexible, so we can keep that reporting standard up there as well, and value added to any current systems. We didn't need any additional hardware, so we don't need to find any additional money, and it does, and it's continuing to integrate with other platforms and technologies. And just on the WCP side, what we're using it for, we went live in July, so we're still in the early stages of using it for the counter IWT work. But we can track investigations and operations. We can see if they're successful, what commodities people are targeting. We can break it down to districts. We can get those arrest details. We're starting it now for case monitoring, or we're starting soon. So for our legal team within WCP, we've got 9 lawyers across Zambia. So we're going to monitor cases directly linked to the operations as well, to get a full cycle of the actual case, from information obtained to the actual operation, follow-up operations, all the arrest details, commodity details, to how the case goes as well. So we can keep that on one platform, and to reduce on that technology overload, we don't need 15 different applications or systems. We can use one system to get everything done. Another thing that we are using it for is also that trend analysis, but also for resource planning. So because we can put expenditure reports on there, what we're looking at doing is breaking that down. So if we know that a pangolin operation, live pangolin operation in this province costs this amount of money, we can then forecast and we can budget accordingly, especially based on the type of commodity, average costs of per operation, per information gathering, per case, how much that's actually going to be needed in the future.
So just on the arrest details, I think what has been very important for us, before EarthRanger, it was done on paper. And paper is something that, it's very good at the time, it gives you information at the time, but once that paper is thrown away or stored somewhere, it's very difficult to actually know what information to get back out of a piece of paper. So what EarthRanger has done is keep that information on a site and then actually put it up on a geospatial thing. I mean, I think most of you know what EarthRanger does, but it's been very useful for pattern setting, for understanding if someone was arrested in one place and then arrested somewhere else. It helps to get a much better understanding of what's going on rather than the paper thing. So it's been a big help there. I think there's one other thing I've forgotten.
We'll work it. Cheers. So are there any questions before we go into the last bit? Not you, Callum. I'm answering your questions. Cool. So yeah, for any Warren Zevon fans, here's an earworm for you. So this is going to be on how we actually, apply it to those key actors within the counter IWT space. So first of all, for the decision maker, not only is it making those hard decisions, but there's oversight, management, and forecasting as well. So not only are you accountable for everything that happens, but you also have to do reporting, which everyone loves, and there's the impact side. You also need to track your assets, making sure everything's good, but there's also time management to take care of as well. And everyone loves the budget thing, so it's that forecasting, just like I said, and that's a way that we're looking at actually improving budgeting and then everything on the financial side, including reporting. But for that, the better planning side comes from visualization. Numbers offend me. I'm not a numbers guy, that's why I can't be an accountant. But colours and maps work for my brain. I can make decisions based off that very quickly. If you throw numbers, never works. So being able to understand decision makers' requirements, use the data that they need, the information they need to make a decision, and visualise it in a way that works for their brain, saves time, and it gets the right decision made faster as well. Another thing we're also looking at, but it helps with that decision, is the automatic reporting. It was mentioned in a couple of the sessions now, but the reporting burden on everyone, be it an individual team commander to an area warden to anyone who's managing a grant, monthly, quarterly, yearly reports take time. So if you can aggregate all that data, integrate it, and make something automatic that saves that time, it means you can do the more important work that has to get done. Another side is that it's the impact versus effort and looking at the right metrics as well. And in terms of the counter IWT side, it's the right target, the right place and the right time to actually disrupt, be it a syndicate, different commodities being poached or sold, different trafficking routes, whatever it may be. So as an example, at WCP, we're using Tableau and aggregating that data. We're starting to get everything cleaned up now. We're using it for the law enforcement. We're also going to use it for the legal side as well. One, it can do automatic reporting, which is fantastic, but it also, again, is that visualization, and it's an analysis tool to make better decisions faster as well. But the data can be used in a whole range of products as well. It's that impact versus effort. You know, from a protected area perspective, it may be great to have how many kilometres a patrol walks each day, but are they walking in the right area? That's the wrong metric to look at. Likewise, if we have a lot of operations looking on different commodities, are we doing them in the right area? Is it actually making an impact? So it could, you know, even a very simple hotspot map could say where we actually need to spend our money to have an impact.
It's possibly not really for this, but one area that EarthRanger has really helped with this mapping is we were having problems with prosecuting poachers, because the poacher would say he was caught outside of the protected area, and the game scout would say that it was actually inside. So there was this issue where there wasn't a defined position. And we had a High Court judge come and visit us at Grimeti and have a look at the EarthRanger system, and straight away just said, look, this is the answer to, this is going to solve all the problems, because you've actually been able to tell us that this arrest happened here, but not only that, the story. So that the patrol left the camp at this time, this is the route of the patrol. At this time there was, they identified the poacher, and at this time there was an arrest, along with X amount of bushmeat confiscated, and so on. So the whole picture is there, and it's visualized. And for someone like a High Court judge to say, I've been letting people go because it's been, a big grey area, whereas now it's very clear to see it on a map. So I think it's going to be very helpful in terms of the deterrent effect going forward, and having some successful convictions.
So 3 key tasks of an analyst, of which there's about 4 million, especially in the counter space, is target development, getting all that information and making sense of it. Developing current targets, but finding the next ones as well. And when operations investigations do occur, is it actually having that impact, or have we just had a lot of effort go towards something? Are we hitting the right people? In line with that is understanding the landscape. So not only national trends, regional trends and international trends, be it on the ivory trade in China and how the price is now incredibly low in Africa, and how that's affecting the trade and the actual poachers and traffickers that we're seeing, and how that impacts trends. But it also can be the future threats as well as what's in demand. So everything to understand that landscape can come in, and if we can put it on one system, all the better. And then the operational support as well. An analyst, one of the key jobs is to positively influence a decision maker in order to make the right decision based on the information that's obtained. So if you can influence to get the right target as an analyst, that's a key part of it, but also on that target development, to be able to understand where the gaps are, where the weaknesses are, to make sure, and also to provide knowledge of threats on different targets as well. And then it can come down to things such as verification, counterintelligence, threat warnings, be on the lookout, this car's seen in this area, it's linked to this person. We have a suspect phone number, let's run it through Semantica on every select information that we have. Okay, yep, he's actually involved in a poaching syndicate, it's probably real commodity. Counterintelligence, what known corrupt officials could be potentially supporting this person, we can check out the links on different systems for that. So yeah, again, it's that better planning and saving time, but it also assists with that info security and operation security. So by having a compartmentalized reporting system, it means information can go to the right people, and it avoids those who don't need to know access to that information. Especially with the analyst and how they can use technologies, that source protection as well. You don't have to give the whole story, you can just give the immediate fact that's going to benefit the operative or the decision maker. And again, it's that support to the counterintelligence cycle as well. So, different ways that it can be utilised is looking at where the operations are and what trends there are, but then also utilising that for different products to support decision makers and where we've got to send people out. So, in Eastern Province, here's an example of some operations that have occurred, but if we get the data from that, there we go, we can start to look at where are the significant routes and trafficking routes, based off decision makers' requirements. So if we can see that seizures in vicinity of these border posts and on these key trade routes are utilised, we know where to put a dog detection team better than just putting them out on the road and hoping for the best. The more we understand on the target, then we can be more specific on that as well. Putting people at the right place, the right time, for the right target. Further with that, and through tools such as Semantica AI, we can start to look at everything regarding a phone basically to find new leads and new suspects. What this can also achieve is if we're having the right impact as well. So we look at disruption in WCP is looking at the connection but the social capital as well. So what's the centrality of a suspect within an organised network and a criminal network? Taking that guy out who has 1,000 links might be better than taking out the guy who only has one, because that's knowledge, and that's where that social capital comes in as well. They have the knowledge, resources, and ability to commit crimes. So we can start to see the centrality, we can develop that target, see if that's the right person to actually take out of a network. And the lawyer. So with our lawyers as well, the primary support that's given, other than things such as magistrate field visits and working with the prosecutors, is on pre, during and post-operation support and advice, making sure we get the right evidence, operations are legal, human rights are maintained. But also what's very key with that case support is utilising additional evidence that can be obtained. So not only through capacity building and mentoring of the investigators and the officers conducting the actions, but also finding other alternative routes, using different connections with law enforcement agencies to find additional evidence to then get better, stronger prosecutions and cases going to court. And in line with that is the case monitoring side, making sure they're all monitored, an ability to track all that monitoring as well, and identifying, highlighting trends. But what that results in is better supporting evidence, not only to obtain it and produce it and utilise it using different technology, different systems, but it also assists with those start points as well. If we know straight away in a case that this person is linked to this, we just need to prove it, we can then straight away go to, okay, we need a call data record for this. Let's not waste time, let's just get it now. Because sometimes it can take a week, a month, depending on the location as well. So an example of that is there was 2 individuals arrested with rhino horn, when was that, 3 months ago? We knew about the target, we knew about for a long time, we just didn't have the opportunity to actually arrest that person. But we knew about the activities of this individual. So that gave us a lot of start points straight away that we could look at additional supporting evidence. We knew that this wasn't his first time trafficking rhino horn, and we knew we had the ability to actually find additional evidence, so we knew straight away what to look for. And then on his phone, Naughty Boy's got quite a few pictures of rhino horn that he's been trafficking. It all adds up to that weight of evidence. If you're going to provide that compared to that, you're going to have a different result in court, and it can become overwhelming. And pretty simple, all of that supports the operative, all of that supports the counter-IWT effort. Any points, Ross? Thank you very much. Yeah, please, any questions? But at the same time, there's no beer on this planet that I'm afraid of, so if you do want to find out more, just hit me up afterwards, that's all good. Cheers.
So what's happening now, so because we've now made that migration, we're still busy moving all of that information over into Semantica, which is great because we can really see a lot more, makes a lot more sense with this new format. But I mean, one thing I don't know if you guys will be more on the loop than I am, is the integration between EarthRanger and Semantica.
Thank you, yes. Where's the EarthRanger guys? Even I want to know. So.
And the reason I'm asking, so like the amount of information we're putting on the resting data, all of that has to be, so what I'm trying to avoid, we're really duplicating data and smart EarthRanger, now we're duplicating EarthRanger and Semantica. So it's just, yeah, it becomes dangerous.
I'm going to look at the green shirts for this one.
Remember how we originally worked with Semantica to access our API so they could pull in reports, field colors. So I don't know, what happened to that.
Everything I've heard is that I'll use this, the talking stick. Everything I've heard is that it's in development, which is, I don't know, I'll leave that there.
He doesn't know what's happening.
Yeah, I've heard that it's in development and there's a parser thing and an API. In other words, I don't really understand. So, I don't know.
I think that's
Yeah,
I think that's something that Gundi might solve. But I know that we have tried to integrate it, obviously like you, and it's not worked.
Actually, it's not an issue of Grundy versus EarthRanger. It's really on the Semantica side because Semantica needs to pull the data from EarthRanger, and we should follow up on because there was funding for Semantica to integrate with EarthRanger. And the fact that Chris doesn't know the state of that tells me that it's probably not happening. So we should connect,
Yep.
and because you guys have the contacts with Semantica.
Yeah, direct link, that's easy.
Right, so it's really a question for them, and a copy would be Chris on that, because Chris was the one that was aware of it, so, yeah.
Yeah, I believe you, yeah, we'll get it done, that's no problem.
Get it done, because probably somebody doesn't know they're supposed to be doing something.
My concern
Hopefully.
is that you might end up with the same problem as Tableau. We have years of data that are everyone has a different arrest category. So is that going to get
Yeah.
to rewrite all your event categories to line up with how Semantica wants to pull that data?
Yeah, and map everything, it's always fun.
My name is Adama, I work for WCS in the regional office, Central Africa. Right now we are also trying to deploy EarthRanger, and so I'm in charge of logistics. So from that perspective, my question is, in most of places you have challenges with internet connectivity. So I want to hear from others, how are you people managing that aspect, getting in terms of tackling internet issues and getting data, let's say, in real time.
Cool. That's why we say we don't really require the real time except for asset management, that sort of thing, which we use GPS trackers for cars, for example, so we can track teams, etc., or Garmin inReaches. But I'll leave that one open for the floor as well. But for us, we don't really need the real time. Plus, anything can be put on EarthRanger. Then once you're in internet, boop, goes up as well, like via Cyber Tracker, for example. But has anyone got any experience with that, with remote tracking monitoring? GPS is not the cheapest, unfortunately, it's the Garmin guys. But not the cheapest, but it's one of those solutions. What's that? I'm not forcing you. You don't have to if you don't.
no.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, just around, to a degree, but I'm still reinforce your question. It's about how you structure or how you capture the data. So just if you understand how Semantica captures the data with nodes and links, then you need to be able to separate that data when you capture it within EarthRanger, if it's relevant in EarthRanger. So obviously there's going to be a ton of data that's not relevant, that isn't captured in EarthRanger that should be in Semantica, but the data that can come from EarthRanger should be separated into those nodes and possible links.
And that raises a good point as well, where it goes back to the most important things, people. And so for things like EarthRanger and Semantica, that's not your solution, right? The only thing that can do analysis is a human brain. So if you're not building on those brains and the staff that you have, it goes to that razzle dazzle. Semantica doesn't give you the solution. EarthRanger doesn't manage anything. It's just information platform. So if you don't build the capacity of that person and they don't understand why they're doing something, then it doesn't work either. So nice segue, that was cool. Cool. Beer o'clock, cool. Cheers guys, yeah, again, if there's anything, just hit me up. Always happy to have a chat.